strange phenomena, and altered memories. What is the Mandela Effect? Welcome to Friday Night Ghost Rides from Haunted Road Media. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. Explore with us. The Mandela Effect is a strange phenomenon in which vast numbers of people remember history differently than what is supposed to be reality. Although not previously known as the Mandela Effect, this phenomenon gained this moniker in 2009 when paranormal researcher Fiona Broom shared at a convention how she had mistakenly thought South African political leader Nelson Mandela had passed away during his imprisonment during the 1980s. Afterward, many of the other conference attendees shared with her that they had also had the same memories, including news coverage and his widow's speech. In Miss Broom's research, she found more and more people who believed Mandela died during the 80s. Yet, Nelson Mandela didn't pass away until 2013. So what is this strange phenomenon that we call the Mandela Effect, in which large numbers of people remember an alternate past? Do you remember things differently than they are now? A common Mandela Effect example is the Oscar Mayer logo. How is the name Mayer spelled? Is it with an A or an E? While many remember it is spelled with an A, it is actually spelled with an E. Another common example of the Mandela Effect is the Fruit Loops logo on the cereal box. Is the word fruit spelled with a UI or an OO? While scores of people remember it spelled with a UI, it's actually spelled with an OO. The Mandela Effect also comes into play in the animated film Snow White. In the classic scene with the evil stepmother talking to the mirror, she says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" Right? Wrong. She actually says, "Magic mirror on the wall." So what's going on here when most people actually remember it as mirror, mirror? We'll get to some more of these in a moment. My introduction to the Mandela Effect wasn't through Miss Broom's website, or an article, or a YouTube video. I was introduced to the Mandela Effect when it happened to my mother and I. A few years ago, I was visiting my parents and a World War II film was on the television. My mother and I both remarked that a favorite film of ours of the genre was an old black and white World War II film featuring ghosts playing baseball. They were a flight crew who had crashed in Africa and, not knowing they were dead, played baseball near their crashed aircraft until they were rescued. Neither of us could remember the name of the film, so I told her I would look it up. Oddly, when I tried to look up this movie, I couldn't find it. Now, I'm a writer, and back in the day, I was a certified Maryland Library Associate, which means I know how to enter in better search terms to get a more accurate result. I was having an impossible time trying to find this movie. Finally, I found a reference to it on a forum about military aviation films, and others had the same question as I. What was this old black and white film with ghosts playing baseball? According to these film buffs, we were misremembering a movie called Soul Survivor, a color movie from the 1970s starring William Shatner. I was in disbelief, as were others in this forum. There was no way this was a color movie. It was definitely in black and white, and it absolutely did not have William Shatner in it. Yet, these experts in aviation films insisted it was the only movie of its kind, and it wasn't a remake of an earlier film. One of the contributors did mention the Mandela Effect. I asked my mother if she remembered at all that this was actually a color movie from the 1970s starring William Shatner. She insisted that no, this was long before Shatner, was definitely black and white, and the ghosts didn't know that they were dead at the beginning of the film. So I hunted down the Shatner film and decided to watch it. As I watched it, I really wasn't sure at first that this was the right movie. Yes, there were the ghosts playing baseball, but they already knew that they were dead. There was no question about that. The fact that it was in color was disconcerting, and the fact that William Shatner was in it seemed really off. Yet, the banter between the ghosts and the investigation into the crash seemed familiar. And then it happened. That one line from the movie. One of the ghosts wasn't the brightest guy in the world, and he was lingering over by the tents of the living, listening to a baseball game on the radio. When he returned to the other ghosts, they asked him how the game was. He said, "It was good, but I don't understand how they moved Brooklyn to Los Angeles. a reference to the Dodgers move during the 1950s. It was that line, a line that had stuck with me ever since I was a kid because I thought it was funny that he thought that they had moved the entire city of Brooklyn to Los Angeles and not just the team, the Dodgers itself. That was it. This was absolutely the movie. Another scene toward the end of the movie, when the ghost disappeared as the bodies were found, helped to seal the deal, as was the closing moments when the one ghost was left alone, his body trapped under the tail section of the airplane, which is ultimately why they call the movie Sole Survivor. I couldn't believe it. How could I, my mother, and all of these other people remember this movie being one particular way? And yet, it wasn't. We're talking about people from all over the world who have never met each other from all different points in time, remembering it the same exact way. How is that possible? Some people believe there is a psychological effect of association that ends up causing people to misremember things in the same fashion, while others believe we're experiencing the effects of parallel universes. Let's take a look at some others. The children's story of Curious George. Does George, a monkey, have a tail or not? Many people remember Curious George with a tail, and several have stated they recall illustrations in which George is hanging out of a tree from his tail. Yet, Curious George does not have a tail. Mr. Monopoly from the classic board game. Does he wear a monocle or not? Scores of people remember him having the monocle, but the correct depiction of him is without it. Some people believe we are confusing him with Mr. Peanut from Planters Peanuts, who does in fact wear a monocle. How about the classic Queen song, We Are the Champions? What's the last line of the song? Do you have it in your head yet? So many people believe the last line is, of the world. Yet the last line is actually, we are the champions. And then it cuts off and quickly fades out. What also exacerbates the problem of the Mandela effect is when our popular culture references the incorrect version in other media, including films. A common example of the Mandela effect is the revelation of Darth Vader to Luke Skywalker that he is actually his father. People have remembered the line as, Luke, I am your father. And in the movie Black Sheep with Chris Farley, he comedically reenacts the scene using a fan to somewhat synthesize his voice and say, Luke, I am your father. However, the actual line Darth Vader says is, no, I am your father. This has also happened again very recently with the Tom Hanks film about Fred Rogers, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Most people seem to remember Mr. Rogers singing the line as, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Except that's not actually what he says. He says, it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood. Yet we now actually have the Mandela Effect version of that line as the title of a movie. Is the consciousness of the world collectively changing these details, perhaps through some sort of thought-form technique, even if they're unconsciously aware they're doing it? I did a live stream show on this a few years ago, showed some of the different examples, and discovered something rather interesting. When I showed the visual examples like Oscar Mayer, Fruit Loops, and Mr. Monopoly, the results were a mixed bag. Some people remembered the Mandela Effect version while others remembered the correct version. However, when it came to the audio examples such as the Magic Mirror and We Are the Champions, everyone remembered it the incorrect way, the Mandela Effect version.
Now there you guys go, mirror, mirror on the wall, mirror, mirror on the wall. Sean, Diane, Shannon, mirror, mirror on the wall.
As humans, we seemingly seem to remember audio better than visual. Methods of learning aside, how many times in our lives have we heard a song come on the radio that we haven't heard in 20 or 30 years, and we are instantly able to just sing along right with it as if we had just heard the song yesterday? It happens all the time. Yet, somehow we're all almost universally misremembering these audio examples of the Mandela Effect phenomena? That doesn't seem logical. There's a lot we still don't understand about the Mandela Effect. Is it psychological? Is it parallel universes? Is it our collective consciousness coming together to change reality since we're all connected in this universe? This phenomenon causes us to question if our memories are even real. Are we living in a simulated universe? I'll leave it at this. What if I told you, hello, Clarice? Neither of these were actually lines in those films, yet we somehow remember they were. And if you want to delve more into the supernatural, please check out our other videos off to the side. I'm Mike Ricksecker. Until next Friday night.